Vandermeer is gonna, we're gonna get started with safety first. Pete Vandermeer is gonna start the demonstrations out.
Okay.
Hey, good morning. So everybody at some level or other already understands that you shouldn't be breathing dust. After the gifts that we've had from Canada for the last month, if you've looked in the sky, you know that you shouldn't be breathing that stuff. Big chunks of wood are really not that much danger to your lungs. Little tiny stuff is really, really bad for you. Everybody has just gone through COVID. We've all got masks everywhere. These crummy little masks don't really do anything, but I would bet that you have lots of friends or relatives that have extra N95 masks that are sitting around that they're not using. You should get all of those that you can and use them. You can get them in multiple colors. You can get them in white. You can get shaped ones. You can get a whole bunch of different options on these things. N95 masks are pretty good. They are not incredibly good. If you're really dealing with something that is very, very intense dust, you should buy a decent 100 mask. They are shaped to fit your face. They're a little bit more uncomfortable, but they will actually filter out everything. And you can get, with these, you can get different types of filters on them. If you are breathing like acetone or any of the solvents, and you put one of these masks on, what you'll realize is that you can't smell the solvents at all anymore. If you're in a closed shop and you're using solvents, you shouldn't be breathing those things. They're bad for your lungs. They're bad for your liver. They're bad for your body. Don't kill yourself with dust. You know, if you go back to the 1940s, the woodworkers down in North Carolina figured out that if you didn't manage the dust for your black walnut, your woodworkers would wind up getting sinus cancer within 10 years. We are breathing stuff that tries to kill us. You know that black walnut is bad for you. You know that all the exotics are really bad for you. If you're dealing with a lot of exotics, eventually you're going to start getting allergic to them, or you're going to get sensitized, or you're going to get sick from them. If you look at what happened with people who work with Western red cedar, if you breathe Western red cedar long enough, eventually you will become severely asthmatic. It's 100% of the people that get that if they breathe enough of that dust. I'm childhood allergic to elm. I have found several times when I've turned a piece of elm that I break out, I start having horrible breathing problems. I'm not asthmatic, but I would get terribly tight. If I used one of these things, I could play with elm all day long and it didn't make any difference. You should try and get dust away from you, whether you use ventilation systems or fans blowing to the outside. A fan that just blows it around in your own shop, closed shop, and doesn't do anything else doesn't really protect you from it. All it's doing is just stirring around the fine stuff, and you're later on going to breathe it. Even if you've got an air thing above that's a semi-HEPA grade, you're breathing a lot of it. You don't want it in your lungs. You don't care where it is anywhere else. So be careful and try not to die from your woodworking.
So Pete, what was your profession that makes you qualified to give this speech?
I was an ear, nose, throat doctor for a long time, and I took care of a whole lot of people with sinus cancers.
Question.
So George's comment is that CBN wheels put out a lot of dust that's fairly bad for you. Actually, regular grinding wheels put out silica. Silica is very bad for you. I didn't bring up talking about these kind of things. I don't know how many of you people have got them. I bought one. I find it really kind of a nuisance to use. I will use it occasionally, but actually N95 or the 100 masks are a lot easier to use. The problem with these is that they're top heavy and they're annoying. No, it's really not a high quality filter. All right. Anything else? You know, it's pro multi-purpose respirator. I mean, you can get them in any Home Depot or yeah, 2 filters, and there's a bunch of different ones. They're almost all 3M or variants of those. Yeah, and you can get different cartridges. Yeah, but they will filter 100% of all the microparticles, or you can get ones that are chemical filters as well, and they will just take out all of the organic solvents.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, and actually I used mine I've used them for spray painting a lot. I brought in a clean one because I thought that you wouldn't be impressed by the ones that have. All right.
I guess I'll go next. As soon as we get Pete in here. I'm going to show my laser burner that I use to engrave the bottom of all my pieces. I have a lot of people that ask me about that when I bring them in. So I'm going to run through a quick setup of this. And then we'll actually burn something here a quick minute. The unit I have, get all the way up in there, Pete, will you? The unit I have is it's a Neje. This is all the bigger it is. Of course, I got the cord here. Let me get the cord on the other side here so I can lift this thing off. So anyways, this is what it looks like. It's just an arm. And it just travels across here. So it only sits on 2 axes or 2 points, and I can overhang a table if I want to laser something that's tall, like a really tall vase. Where the heck is this going? How can you put that all the way up on there it is. Thought I had this all worked out, but I guess I did. So anyways, that's a pretty small piece. This is all it is. The laser just travels back and forth and up and down this way to make its path. You can use these with a smartphone. The problem I've found with a smartphone is I can upload like an image of my logo, but I can't add any text to it on my smartphone. I couldn't find the option to do that. But with a laptop, you can download the program that comes with it, and it will give you the option to change that up. So what I do, let's switch that now to number 4 so they can see my computer screen here. This unit here is a Neje, is called the Neje 2 Plus Master. It's a 7-watt head. It cost me $269 about 3 years ago. They don't make it anymore. They make a 3 now. And the 3 is the same price. And I saw yesterday you can get them on YouTube or on eBay for $199, the 3, brand new. It comes with, I think mine says it's a 7-watt head. The new one says 5.5 to 7.5. I don't get that, how it can be arranged, but it's a laser. So, but it's a Neje, Neje is the brand name of it. There are tons of them out there. If you look on eBay or on Amazon, you'll see all kinds of them. I picked this one because it doesn't have the square frame. A lot of them have 4 points. And then you've got to fit your piece in the middle. And if you've got a great big huge piece, it might not fit in that. So I wanted something like this where it can overhang and I can put the piece off my table. I actually took my bench, and I built a new bench, and I actually put a bunch of shelves on rollers that I can pull out for whatever height I want for my piece, because I'll have this overhanging it. So it looks like I got a bowl this deep, so I'll pull out the second shelf and set it in there, and I can get it within, I like to have it about 1.5 inches away from the actual piece. So this is the program up here. You can see it on the screen, guys. There's the program that comes with it. It's Neje's program. You can also use Lightburn if you have Lightburn. It takes a little more to set it up, and I see lots of comments online, people having problem even getting this one set up. But they have on their website, they actually have, if you go to the way bottom, and there's a QR code on the side of these. If you scan that, it brings you right to the Neje site and all the setup. And if you go to the very bottom, there's a video that shows exactly what to do to set up this program or to set up Lightburn. And they show you all the settings you have to do to make it work. But I use this program because it's worked for me. And what I can do, let me clear this and start over again. So what I do in here, I have a logo that I use on all my stuff. It's not the clown or the pig or Yoda. It's the one on the bottom here, my DBS. So it's in the library there, which is online. I found out yesterday when we set this up, you have to have an internet connection to get to your library. It's not stored on the computer. It's stored in the cloud somewhere. So we had to bring in a hub this morning so we can hook this up to the internet. So once I load it on here, it shows it 47 millimeters, which is probably about 2 inches. 26 is 1 inch. So 2 inches is a little too big for most of the bottom of my things. So I can go in here and I can set the size. So what I'll do is I'll just get I'm just going to change the width to 26. I'm going to 28, make it a little bigger. And then it automatically figures the height. So there's my piece now. It's kind of small. I can hit control here and I can blow this up. So there, now you see it. So I say, okay. And it gives you different options. Sometimes there's 3 options. If you have a color piece in there, a color photograph, it'll show you 3 different options, black and white, and then 2 of them with color or different shades of gray. But because this is a black and white image, I only get 2 options, and I like to pick the finer one. So I picked that. Now this is why I use the program. I can enter text here. So I can put on here that I got a piece of pine here that I think it's pine. Maybe it's maple. Might be maple. So I can type in maple. I can highlight this, and I can adjust the size. Oh no, hang on. The font is right here. So I can go in here and look at what font I have, and it saves whatever you did last. So I'll do a little bigger print here. That looks way too big. Let's do 32. So I'm picking a 32 size font. So there's my maple. It shows it just regular block print, but once I put it onto the board here, it's going to show it with the actual print that I selected. And then I can do in here, like I can do my usually I'll do a stock number. I inventory all my things, so I can put in 079 and put my stock number in there, and then I can click on insert. And now wherever I put my mouse it's moving it around. So I can go up here and I can say, okay, I want that right here. But I look at that, my maple doesn't look centered very well. Let's move the maple over one click. So now I go over here, it looks a little better. So I can click where I want it. So there's my logo. So then what I can do, I can move this for now. I say, okay. And I have these different options on how to center this piece. So I'm going to put on here where I want it to draw the square where this is going to go. So now it's coming out here, and it's going to draw that 26 millimeter square roughly on where it's at. So I can get an idea how this is going to fit on my bowl and how big it is. Usually if I'm doing a bowl or something, before I get to this process, I'll take my center finder out there and I'll put a little pencil dot right in the middle of that. Because one thing I can do here is when I'm done, I can just hit center, and now it'll go right to the center of the thing. So now I can position my bowl so that dot is right on the center of it. I can adjust the image here. I don't know if you can get that or not, but If it's blurry, it's it's probably too bright to see that anyways. But it's easy to see when it's centered because suddenly it gets really focused and fine and pretty bright. There's a center point. So that's centered right there. I'm probably about 1.25 inches away from the surface of my board here, which is what I usually do. And then I'm going to cover this up because you cannot watch this. Do not. I'm putting this on here so that it's out of view from everybody in the audience. But you can watch it up there. Can you still see it?
Yeah, we can see it.
It's on there. So I hit stop. It goes to the next screen. Oh, hit bit number 4 in there again. There are a couple other settings on here that you can go to. I have laser intensity here, laser power. I'm at 76%. I have burning time, which is the speed, which it's been at 10. When I bought it, it was at 10. I left it at 10. You can speed this up. I don't know if that makes it go faster. I'm guessing I could, instead of taking 6 minutes, the laser something, it would take maybe 5 or something. I did see online the other day there, because they have Neje has a Facebook page with all this, and so I see there once in a while. And somebody on there had put on there, yeah, I set my screen up and I put laser power at 100 and I put the speed at 100, and after about 4 minutes, everything quit working. There's a settings page here. When I go to the settings page, that has speed here too, and very fast. It's got like 2 little warning signs. Don't go there. So this is like the default setting here where I'm at. So I just have always left that on default, figuring they had a reason for that. It worked for me. Although on here, on this screen, I will change that percentage if I do something and it's not dark enough, because I'll run a test run on different pieces. And if it looks like it's not going to be dark enough, or if it's really burning into it, if it's really soft wood, it might be really burning into it rather deep. So then I might lessen that up a little bit, because I have stuff I've turned like at 62 or something like that, but I'm at 76%. So once you got all this set up and you're ready to go, you just hit print, and then it's going to start. It's going to start engraving that on there. They give you red glasses to wear, so if you want to watch it, you can watch it with your red glasses. Basically, you can watch it with anything that's red filter, and it's not like this is a special red or special glasses. From what I've read, you could buy a piece of plexiglass and some red spray paint and spray paint it, and you're valid to watch it. Usually when I do my logos, they're about what I'm doing here. It takes 5 to 6 minutes to burn that, so it's not a super fast project. But I'll get that going, and usually I've got them lined up. I got 4 or 5, and I just do that, and I walk and do laps in my garage and get my steps in. Yeah. Some people will make it round that you can like make up medallion and then move it to the bottom of the piece. Yes, you could go to like I could go to Word, Microsoft Word, and make a round thing, save it to a JPEG, and then import it into here. So that was how I made that logo that I'm using now. I went into Word. I like use Word for all my paint because they have a paintbrush in there. And I put in the tree, and then I put in my letters, picked my font and my sizes, and then I created a JPEG from there and transferred it into this. And that's how I print all this. And so,
safety word on this.
Yes.
My favorite sign in the laser lab was, do not look at the laser with your remaining eye.
I'm gonna put that sign in my shop. That's pretty funny. Do not look at the laser with your remaining eye, in case you missed that online. Yeah, you cannot look at that. It will do permanent damage. It's unfixable. So Tom was just gonna say that. Yeah, it's not a joke. Now, people, when you first get they think, oh, you got to have it outside. You need lots of ventilation. It hardly puts off any smoke, So because when I did it, I was doing it outside, thinking, oh yeah, I got to do this outside, and I have a covered port, breezeway, and doesn't really matter. You know, the only good thing outside is and I forgot to bring them in. When I first did this, I made some small plates that have like the lighthouse pier in Grand Haven on, because people like to buy those for souvenirs. And I did the Lowell showboat on one because I was in the Lowell gallery, and those I was doing like they're like 6x6. They take about 2 hours to turn because it's like 6 minutes per square inch. So I would set that outside where I wouldn't bump it and let it go all day. If you get all done and it doesn't look dark, something came out wrong, as long as you don't touch anything, you can just hit and burn again. It'll burn it right back on the same image. And you can't even tell that you redid it. So yes. This one here, I can do, I think 6x8. The new one does 6.5 by 6.5 inches. It's 170 millimeters by 170 millimeters is the most it'll do. They make bigger ones that'll do more. I think this one is 6.5 by 8 or something like that. So yeah, it's fairly big. This, I'll pass this around when it's done. That just burning it here, you can feel it with your thumbnail, but it doesn't take much to like sandpaper, you know, get my DA out and take it off and redo it if it really didn't look right. You can increase the laser. I mean, they say this will cut. If you want to cut something, you better be looking at a 30 watt or 40 watt. I did see that somebody online had a brand new one like this with a 40 watt on it, a 40 watt laser that will cut, I think, 1/4 inch veneer plywood. And they wanted $275 for it. So yes, Terry.
My daughter takes care of thin plywood, burns all the way through that. That does make a lot of smoke.
Probably.
So she does have a little vent to dryer hose goes out through the window.
Okay. Yeah.
Something on the surface don't get that.
No, I mean, this is it right now. I'm sure y'all can smell it, but yeah. Sounds like we're getting close to the bottom here on this.
Hey Doug, how flat does the surface have to be? Does it work okay on a slightly concave
Yeah,
bottom of the bowl?
It does, because I did a bowl that I put text on the whole outside of the bowl, and I put it on there in 4 steps. When you take this, and if I took that board off from underneath there, which is a 3/4 inch piece board, and let it shine down on the table, the amount that laser diffuses is hardly noticeable. So you can have a 1 inch slot, a 1 inch drop from one end to the other, and aim your laser point in the middle of that arc, and it'll cut the whole thing. Because I did that with a 9 inch bowl. I went around it, and you know, I didn't have a rotator, but they do make a Y-axis rotator you can add to these, where it actually is rotating the piece, and instead of moving the bar, it rotates the piece. Here's the yeah. Anytime I've done that, I've just used the same settings. And I'm afraid if I moved something on here, it might mess something up. So I always just use the same setting and just run it again at that same setting. And it just makes it darker. Yeah. And then just sand it away if it's too dark. I could go up to 6 inches. Yeah, I could cover that whole board with it. Yeah. I was going to bring in a plate that I made and I forgot, and it had so many things I was trying to remember to bring in. So, but yeah. Yeah, I actually think it burns nicer on harder wood. I meant to bring in a piece of hard maple today that was all sanded. But I think if it's not sanded like that, I just took out of Tony's bin out here, and it's burning the rough stuff, so it's not so crisp and clear. But when you're all done and you've sanded that, and I usually have a sanding sealer on it, and I've sanded it, and then it does it super crisp because there's no left up, no pull out fibers or anything for it to burn. It just burns the hardwood. So, but, yeah, at first I didn't know if I wanted to go there And then I did it on something that I put in the gallery, and like the next day that piece sold. And I'm like, did they buy it just because it had the professional logo? I didn't know. So then I just started putting on everything that I make now. I put that on there because in a year I can read it. Some of those I use like a good marker, but even after 4 years or something, it gets hard to read what that says on the bottom anymore. So, but oh, I know. I do have some pieces that I haven't sold that are 4 years old. Or probably 3 years old, so. Any other questions? Yes, Terry. Yep, I sanded all the way down to the 320 and I put my sanding sealer on it and then I sanded again to 320 and then I do my stuff. Cause I don't want to put sanding sealer on it after I've done that. I don't know why, I just lacquer it then when I'm done. Or whatever I'm putting on it, usually lacquer, so. No, don't lacquer it because if it's reflective, it reflects the beam back instead of letting it in. So yeah, you want it to be flat finish. So I'll put my sanding sealer on there and then I'll do my final sanding and then I'll do it. Then I'll do the laser. My sanding sealer is 50-50 shellac and denatured alcohol. That's what I use for a sanding sealer. So I would sand it all at 320 or 220, and then I put my sanding sealer on, let it dry, and then I sand it to 320. And now I'm done with the bottom. It's all sanded, it's at 320. The sanding sealer is mostly sanded off, and then I'll laser it. Sometimes I'll take a little 400 grit or maybe some steel wool if it looks like there's like a powdery edge on it, and take off that powdery edge. But that's it, just a little, usually 400 pad paper, just scuff it real quick, dry it, and then shoot it. Any other questions? Okay, there you go. Now you've seen my laser printer.
So, when I got my lathe from Dave Phillips, came with some stuff I didn't even really know what it was. And the coolest part about what I found was this thing. This is a monster. Looks like this lathe has narrower opening. This is a monster hollowing tool, part of the system. And what's interesting is that at Ron's retreat, Carter just now introduced basically the blue version of this, the replacement of it. And the guy that did the monster thing went out of business, retired, something, whatever. So what this is it's a fully articulating arm that allows you to do hollowing. But as I was working with it, realized that, like, Bruce said he had some trouble with his hands. This is something you could use later after you're not as able as you are today, or for people who have had some disabilities, you could use this to assist in turning the outside too. But so I started this project and got the outside of it set and thought, okay, I can get in about 6 inches with normal tools, but then what am I going to do to the rest? So even with this system, this is how it works, and it's not going to balance because it's not attached to the lathe. Can you see that? Okay, so ignore this. This is for a laser thing. The tool will go in here like a boring bar, and I can point that in the direction of, I wonder if we can get this thing secured somehow. You want to just hold that, or? Okay, great, thank you. So my tip or trick is not to buy the Carter thing, which I would recommend because I ended up buying part of that system. It's a much better laser pointer, and I adapted it to mine. But the normal tool that came with this just sits in here, and you can get it into the bowl or object, vase, whatever you're making. And obviously you can only go so far, right? So I thought, well, you know, this is just a simple piece of round steel. And for a larger project, you can just make the part long. So now I can go in even bigger than that and get all the way to the bottom with either the small cutter or the scraper. And then I'm always marking the end of this to see where I am relative to the end. And of course, then this thing will help me show where the end of my tool is. But that's only kind of part of the problem. Now, because if you see that, if you can imagine what this looks like, we're gonna, oops, that's even short. Oh, great. Now that's not gonna fit. All right. Good thing this is not a sponsored event and the advertisers will cancel us. So this becomes my tool rest. It mounts in the banjo. Oh, it just might. Is it? Okay, perfect. It's just a little bit tall. And it allows me to get to the bottom of a really deep vessel with support, and I only have to hang over 2 or 3 inches on the end. So this is just a piece of 3/4 inch by 1 1/4, 1 1/2 steel with some holes put in it and board to fit on a post. So basically that's the trick. Yeah. That's it. Any questions? I made the bar and the extension. Yeah. Yeah. No, you can't buy that anywhere else, right? And it's got to have a big enough hole. I mean, you can't do that through a little bird's eye thing, right? But at least this will get you deep enough so that this is not just completely waving in the wind. George? Yeah. Yeah. You mean so you can cut to the inside?
Just one that.
Yeah, yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. So he was asking if we could use a J bar. You mean a J-shaped tool rest and go on the outside of the piece? Oh, sure. Yeah, if it's deep enough. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and you could theoretically, you could cut this thing or bend it in any shape or form you wanted that made sense for your project. I left it straight because 1, I'm lazy, and 2, it worked for my project. You know, if I felt like I was still getting vibration out here, then it would be smart to make this into a shape that got me closer to it, right? The thing I was mentioning earlier that I didn't use it for, that I think is really kind of a hidden benefit, is that if you take the part you're working on, maybe you can already imagine this.
I'll be the Chuck.
There you go. You'll call him Chuck now.
Call me Chuck.
All right. You could actually be using this on the outside with a tool rest out here. But now any of that vibration or stiffness that you have in your hands at the end of the day would be gone because you're really just guiding this really gently. So it takes away a lot of that stress that you might have.
They still make that. You can get at.
If you go to Carter, it's not yellow. And the bearing points are a little bit different design, but I use this at Ron's retreat, the Carter version, and it's basically the same thing. The double roller. Well, you know what they say, the cheapest part of this whole thing was buying the lathe in the first place. I did play with that a little bit, but again, I got this with my lathe, so I just started playing with it. And I got a hold of Monster, the guy that was he was basically out of business, not going to keep doing it. And it's just nice that Carter picked it up and, you know, is going for now. And I've talked to the engineer who worked on it. He was there at your retreat. And it basically has really the similar bearing. This is not a bolt in a post. This has roller thrust bearings on both sides of this. So this moves very easily, and as does the Carter product. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I could even make you these if you want one, you know, I don't know, for $75 or something like that. But it doesn't do you much good unless, well, you could use it with it just by hand, really, you know, so.
So can I show you?
Yeah.
What I want, and I was gonna walk over and talk to George here. I want something like this. Where this part here, 1 inch up and down is threaded, and I can put a nut on there.
Oh. and
So
adjust-
then when it's inside there and I'm just a little higher, a little low, I can just micro adjust that and then keep going and not have to get everything out, undo this. I can just tweak the nut.
Mhm.
How hard would that to be? Can you thread this? Is this
Oh, yeah,
threadable?
yeah, yeah, oh, yeah.
But you wouldn't have to thread, I wouldn't want to thread down here where it's, I'd
Right,
want
where
to
you
thread
can
it from
thread.
here on up. So you're
Yeah.
not ruining your threads with this.
Yeah, so if you,
Yeah.
and
Well, you still have to loosen it, don't do it by hand. You know, once you loosen, it falls down, you know, it's. Well, I have that, but it's still to adjust it though, a little bit, you know.
he's thinking ahead of.
It's
stuff.
always too high. I got loosen the stop collar, drop it down. It'd be a lot easier if I could just put a wrench on there,
Mhm.
you know. and
Yeah, you
just
could
tweak
easily,
that.
you could easily thread it from one end with a die. If you needed to thread it in the middle.
Well, you'd have to start with a bigger post,
Well,
thread it, and then turn the top and bottom.
And
down.
then you'd have to have a 2-piece nut to put a nut. So
Yeah.
you could get it around there. So
Yeah.
there's some magic that would have to happen, but as long as you can live with thread off the one end,
Yeah,
then
yeah,
you could put pins in it.
yeah, it was still. But
It's not
but
quite
I'm
infinite.
I'm talking an eighth of an inch.
He wants.
John, what do you have?
An Acme thread here? Oh, okay. Yeah, sure, sure. Right.
Could
Yeah.
you repeat that comment?
Yeah, so rather than using a tool post like this, you would use Acme thread rod, which Acme thread is the same thread. It had, you know, on a chuck, on a. Yeah, each one of these points is pointed on the thread, but when you have an Acme thread, those are flat. So you could use, you could put it in here and you could use your normal screw type tightening and go against that and it wouldn't wreck the threads. Yeah. Yeah, right.
Right.
It doesn't matter. You're not going to use them. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but it would grab nicely. Yeah. Mhm. On the end. Yeah. You could do like a bullet catch and put a brass bead on the end. Oh, it's true. It'll jump a little bit. Yeah.
Doesn't Lyle Jameson sell a tool rest with the threaded shank?
That's what he's saying. But it's not an extended thing like this. It's just a standardized. Yeah. It's physically possible. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Good?
Yeah, very good.
All right.
Just want to do a quick check. Who has tips and tricks that they want to show today? So Ron, I know Tom, and there's at least one online. So just trying to get an idea for what we've got left.
Hello, I'm Tom. I have two really small tricks for you. One is if you're doing wire burning, I know some of you have seen you get a wire between two pieces of wood and you hold it on there well, these are an alternative, which is, in my opinion, a lot safer. You can pick them at a garage sale for $2. You have different thickness wires you can put into them and you just lay it across your part and it burns the ring for you. It's really safe. You're not gonna get your fingers caught in it. It's fast. If you're doing you know, I just grab the thing, put it on, put it back up on the shelf. I'm done. So if you do any of that, this is a nice, safe way to do it. Now, I think they each cost me about $1. The wire breaks, you just replace it. I don't, but I should. I buy the one at Ace Hardware and it does break after a while. I think you can buy hardened wire or stronger wire, which I don't have, but
Yeah, I bring in my extra guitar strings every once in a while, put them on the table. Those work really well. You've got different gauges.
yeah,
Really small, you got really big.
it's just the idea of using a hacksaw for $1 or $2 at a garage sale really works. Second one is, you know, if you're doing like John Barron's threaded boxes the other day and you don't like to hog out the center, if you use a Forstner bit, I don't know, can you see this? There we go. Because you don't want to hog it all out by hand, that works, but you get this little tip at the bottom that's either you got to leave your bottom a little thick to compensate for that, or you have to hollow by hand. And one trick I've learned is if you have an old set of Forstner bits, take one that's the same size so it can fit in the hole, so it doesn't need to be guided anymore, and you just grind the little tip off. And some people here say they've done that, but it's an easy way to get a flat bottom on your box or whatever you're making. So thought that was worth sharing. That's it.
Selling Mary Kay too. This actually is a tool that I made. I found it, worldwidewoodturners.org. They do Wednesday night Zoom meeting every week. Typically there's a demo of some type. This is just a 1/4-inch carbide double end mill, ball nose. Then I just made a handle for it. And for hollowing, especially like, you know, the really coarse woods like oak or ash or so forth, you can get in there. I made it a longer handle and it's also offset. So more like the axe handle, so you can tell where you're at with it. And you can get in there a long ways at hollowing stuff out. Doesn't cost a whole lot. There's just a piece of cold rolled steel and some fixtures for plumbing. The other also was demoed on the Worldwide Woodturners. And I put some cards over on the table if anybody's interested in joining it. This is a offset chuck. And all you have to do is take 2 jaws opposite each other off your chuck, measure, see what fits on there, and then drill the hole whatever size you want. Then you make a mating piece. And it's drilled so it doesn't crack. Slot it on the bandsaw. You tighten it up. There's no wrenches or anything needed. This block actually marks the center when you put it on the chuck. Slide it right over to the jaw, and then you're back on center each time. And you can move it in your chuck, whatever you want to offset, back and forth. Jim Duxbury from that group, he's a professional turner. So there's smaller jaws than that, but it sets just like that. So you need no tools to set it up. You can move it whatever increment you want away from the jaw, and you can measure if you want. And then you can do, you know, pennants or stuff like that, anything you want with offset, you know, turning on it. Sure.
Does the tenon of the piece fit in?
No, I double side tape whatever it is to it. Yeah. And turn down, and if you see real close, you can see where there's some lines where come to it. But typically you get close and it just peels away. But that's all I have.
I'm gonna. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm gonna sneak right in here. On top of that, I saw that he showed, and of course, I have a 3D printer, so I made a version of that which has serrations, so I can control, you know, the increments. It also has, I'm not sure where we're seeing anything here, but. So this is geared. So I can increment that at the angles. So it's just a little bit more precision from that sense. And like I said, I was impressed with that, but I thought, oh, I got a 3D printer. I can improve on it. You know, so I've made one piece like a pendant out of this so far. You know, so, but.
Sounds like a demonstration.
Yes, it's double face tape. Doing that one piece, I thought, well, you've got to do both sides probably, you know, so how can I transfer that, you know, with something on the tailstock? I haven't actually figured that out yet, you know, but, you know, the piece that I did, all I did was offset this to a point where I could put the hole in for the pendant. And that's all I did. But you could do, you know, patterns, star patterns, whatever, right? So. Yeah, tray might be a little big for. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. You could, right, you could, but then you wouldn't have that, this capability. So what was the question? The question was, can I just put the tenon of the bowl right in this piece? And I guess you could. Boy, I guess you could.
Can you talk into the mic?
Stay tuned, that'll be next week.
Yeah, so that's, I just thought, well, he showed that. It was just a evolution of when I saw you posted a video of it. And when I saw that, I right away, I went and made this, so. All right, yes. Well, if you were to, if this was on the lathe, let's just say I had a pendant that is the same size as this right here. If I double face that pendant, it's doing offset turning wherever I want it to do that. Yeah. Well, it is. Well, yeah, I mean, you're gonna get to a point where you're not even on it anymore. Yeah. Yeah, so here's my center. So I'm really not even cutting anything. Yeah.
So if you're making a medallion for your wife, it's round, but there's arcs in it.
And you could actually do that on one side, flip it over and do it again, and you'd have, you know, see-through. So anyway, that's the one I brought. I brought a couple other ones, but we probably have time. If we have time, we'll go back to those. So.
After all of these, this is like the remedial class. Whoops. Like the remedial class. I'm sure none of you have this issue, but I know I always have an issue on my lathe. I don't have, I've got a table next to my lathe and things like that, but I always find myself using one or two tools and all kinds of small parts, and I'm dropping them in the crap on the floor, and I'm always losing everything. Yeah. So it's simple, and I'm sure a lot of you have these, but maybe a lot of guys don't. And so I've got a block that fits between the ways. This way is a little bit smaller than my Powermatic, but it slides on there and slides up and down the ways on the lathe. And then I can just, if I use more than one tool for what I'm working on, I have the ability to just lay them in here and throw a little.
Can you talk into the mic?
Keeps them off the floor. Sorry. Yeah, really. There we go. But have the ability to throw small parts on the plate and also rest tools in there. I'm sure none of you have had the issue, but I will admit that I've knocked tools off of my lathe onto the floor, and you wind up having to regrind and things like that. So this prevents me from having to do that. So that's it.
Yeah, let me get this over. So yeah, this is not my previous thing was a tip, and now I'm going to show a jig. For me, it's getting close to Christmas season where I'd be making a whole bunch of snowmen. Here's my snowman blanks. This is left over from a year ago, where I found it in a pile. I think I took it out of my wood burning pile. But anyways, this was ready to go, and for some reason I decided not to turn it. But what I do when I'm making lots of something, like when I make my snowman, I right now I'm planning on making 60 of them. I have my blanks all cut up and on the floor, and I'll probably make that many trees also. So I got all these things I'm making. First thing I do is make sure my tenon is the same, almost exactly on every one of them. And I do that by laying my pencil on my on the top of my thing while it's turning, and you can see it's really close here. It draws a mark here, and that mark is almost perfect for a 50 millimeter chuck. So I make sure they're all like that. And then when I turn these, I turn away until the line's gone and I stop. So I mean, I've got 100 pieces now, all with the exact same size tenon. That way, when I'm mass producing stuff, I can quick put them in my chuck and not be turning, oh, this one's way bigger. I can make it bigger. This one's way smaller. I can get it like 2 cranks, put it in 2 cranks and keep going. Then when I'm all done and you got all these pieces, you got to take the bottoms off. What happens when you take your parting tool and you cut this bottom off this thing? You can see it on here. I got all this tear out. You know, you can't get that. So now you're trying to sand away all this tear out because you took the bottom off with your parting tool. Or even if I get in there with my little detailed carbide, I can still, if it's really punky, there's going to be tear out in there. So what I did, and it takes a long time. You got 100 of these things. You know, I got 50 trees and 50 snowmen, and I'm forever taking and sanding the bottom. I went and took, and a couple of years ago, drilled this size 10 in this block, and I offset it. So it's all different here. I put my best blade in my bandsaw, and I set this in here, and I get this set whichever way that it's sitting flat, and I just cut that tenon off on my bandsaw. And I can go through 50 of them in about 20 minutes. And if I put in, I have a wood slicer blade that's super thin. It's got a really small curve, and I think it's 22 teeth an inch. It's super fine. You can't even see teeth mark. I'll use that, and I can run it through there, and all I have to do is run a little 220 on the bottom of all them, and I'm done. I can sign them. So that's my tip and my jig. So, all right, let's go online there. Dave, you're up.
All right, can you see a picture coming through?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a safety tip, following up on what Pete had talked about, how the large particles won't get you, but the small ones will. And my tip or my safety suggestion is to make sure you understand the filtration bags that come with your dust collector. So I have a Harbor Freight 2 horsepower, in quotations, 2 horsepower dust collector, and they come with a filter bag that is only rated down to 5 microns. So if you use their stock filter bag, you're actually lifting dust and blowing it around your shop, which is a bad deal. So the tip is to look for some aftermarket filters. This is a cartridge filter from Win Environmental, and it goes down to 0.5 micron, which really makes it much safer for breathing. And it has more surface area than the bag, so you can actually get higher flow rate through it as well. So, and then the other safety thing I wanted to mention was an air particulate count meter. This is one that I bought about, I guess, 12 years ago when I started turning. There are a lot more versions on the market today. If you go on eBay, you can probably buy one for about $30. But basically it samples the air in your shop and gives you a number reading for how many particles you have. And what I find it useful for one thing, my shop's in my basement. So not only do I want to protect my lungs with a respirator, I want to keep the rest of my house clean so my wife and my kids don't have lung problems later. So this helps me really gauge how effective my dust collection is in my shop. And some things I've learned, I found times when I actually broke a hole in my the housing on the blower for my dust collector, and I was blowing air back into the shop, and it showed up right here before I noticed that I had a hole. And I've also found that my table saw is much worse than anything I do on the lathe in terms of putting dust in the air. So that was those two tips related to dust. And then The other thing I wanted to show, I've got a small shop in my basement. I turn a lot of green wood, make a lot of shavings that I want to keep under control and want to keep from landing on my table saw and the other cast iron surfaces. So I have a curtain around my lathe area. I've tried a bunch of varieties in the past, and what I've settled on is a system you can buy from IKEA. And the real key point, the thing I like about it is that it has some corner pieces. So you can make a curtain that will go around a corner. So mine, I have my lathe against a wall. Then I've got a curtain on the right side, a curtain behind me, and then the same curtain comes down on the left side. When I'm using it, I can make this enclosed room. When I'm done, I can get the curtain out of the way real easily and have room for other things to do in the shop. And it's actually from IKEA. It's Vidga, V-I-D-G-A. For mine, it cost me around $100 when I set it up for the track. So not, it is a little bit of an expense, but it's very convenient and works very well. The other tip, I have, again, a small shop where I like to move things out of the way when I'm not using them. And I bought a Harbor Freight mechanics cart, shortened it a little bit so it was the right height. And then that's what I use for my grinder. I can store my chucks in it. I've got a drawer for tool rests. I have my more common turning tools or gouges off to the right-hand side. Keeps everything in one place. I can have it inside of my little turning curtain when I'm working on my lathe, and I can move it out of the way afterwards. And then I guess another tip, if you ever go that way, it really works better if you have the casters on the bottom that are all swivel casters. And then last tip related to curtains. At the end of the curtain, I've found a way that makes it easy to seal the curtain against the wall. So basically a piece of steel outlet box cover mounted on the wall, and then a rare earth magnet that I taped onto the tarp in this case, which the curtain is. So that easily, it holds it securely, but it comes apart real easily when you want to move the curtain. So like in my case, this is right adjacent to my turning area. I've got some tools and sanders and so on that I can use the magnet fastener to protect them and then open it up quickly when it's time to use them. And I think that is all I have. Yeah, that's it for me.
So with your air quality monitor, do you leave that on the whole time you're turning? And then
Yes, I do. Right. And I guess one thing there, it's hard to buy one that would be certified to whatever, the official standards are. But what I do is I take it outdoors and see what's the quality outside, and I can compare in my house and I can compare in my shop and see, how well I'm doing compared to ambient air. And really my shop, when everything's running, my shop has the cleanest air anywhere in my house.
okay. All right.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
Go ahead, Ruby, you're on.
Okay, maybe he wants to highlight me first.
You're highlighted. We see.
Oh, okay. One thing I forgot to show you was this little jig called a Gilbert jig. And I use this when I'm doing the spindles. It's got a measuring area here. So when you press against it, you can see the bar comes down and it tells you exactly what the diameter is of the piece you're turning. So when I have this on the lathe, what I do is I just press it against and I can read what thickness I have here while I'm turning. So if I want this to come down to 1.5 inches, I press it against the wood as I'm cutting, and I know exactly when I get to the thickness that I want. So it's one of the handiest tools that I have. And if you have to do a lot of spindles, that's something you really want to get.
And what's it called again?
It's a Gilbert caliper. Gilbert.
Okay.
And it does come in metric as well as inches.
All right, Pete Vandermeer again. my wife, early on, when I started making vases and bowls, started saying, what good is a wooden vase? Because you can't put really anything into it other than dry flowers. I'd done a lot of boat building, and so I decided I would start putting epoxy on the inside of vases. So I don't do it. That one's not a particularly finished one, but what I do is mix up boat building resin. They're either 50-50 or 2-to-1 mixtures. That depends upon the brand that you get. And what I will do is mix it up fairly quickly, roughly. This is a 2-to-1 version. And there are different speeds of resin that you can get depending upon how rapidly you want it to cure. I often want it to be a little bit less viscous or a little bit more penetrating, so I'll put a little bit of acetone in to mix in with the mix. You can do up to about a 25% mix of acetone with your epoxy. It thins it down. The key on epoxy is that you have to stir it more than you think you need to, because it absolutely is dependent upon getting complete mixture of the resin and the hardener. But I just mix it up fairly quickly, fairly roughly. There are like 5-minute epoxies that you probably better stop stirring at about 45 seconds. This is a longer version, but absolutely stir it more than you think you need to. And then all I do is just dump it inside. And I don't know if there's a good way of showing it, but I just roll it around. I'm stirring it around. You can see where, and even on a deep vase, you can see. Can you? Okay. You just look around and you can just follow the pool of it going around, all the way around. If you want to, you can put a finger in and you can brush it. But if you do that, make sure you don't touch the outside of the bowl with your epoxy finger. And at the bottom, after it sits for a while, if you look at the piece that's turning around, there's always a clear, shiny bit at the bottom. But if you do that and just let this sit for 6-8 hours or a day, you can put water into it. It turns it into a vase that is actually a vase. If you're doing something that's going to be exposed to the air a lot, exposed to sunlight, like the inside of a, like a big bowl or something like that, you need to cover it with something that will tolerate UV light, because epoxy is not UV tolerant in the long run. So then you have to put a couple layers of polyurethane on top. But I've done salad bowls that way that get used, several times a week for years, and they will stay essentially plasticized. So it's a way of making a bowl that can be used for, other things. It's not dishwasher safe, but it's safe for quick washing in the sink. So
What type of resin was that again?
I just use boat building epoxy. There are any number of companies that will sell it to you. This one is Total Boat. But you just, right. The problem with the polyester resins is that you need to have ventilation, and they stink for days and days and days. Polyester resin is not friendly.
What prep did you have on that? What do you do? Do you sanding sealer inside before you do that?
Nothing.
Right, bare wood.
Just a bare wood.
You ever do more than one coat?
If there are big knot holes, because what you'll find is that the knot hole leaks out. So you either have to have sealed it off. I use like 5-minute epoxy to seal cracks that I can tell beforehand and sand them flat. But this was just a throwaway bowl. Yeah. It's, unless you break it, it's sealed. Huh? Cured epoxy is chemically all catalyzed together, so it's a piece of plastic.
Do we have anybody else? Any other tips, tricks, and jigs? Freaks, failures, and safety first. We did safety first, so I guess that is going to wrap up our meeting then, right, Dave?